Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, we're going to have a look at two of the heavyweights in the Linux community right now. We're going to look at Linux Mint and Manjaro. So both of these are distros that have done very well. Obviously, they are top rated on DistroWatch, which doesn't mean a lot in terms of who's using what distro. What the rating on DistroWatch is how many times does a distro get hit on DistroWatch with a view. That's really all it does. So it's not necessarily indicative, but it does have some bearing in what's actually happening because people go and view what they're looking for. You hear about something, you look up a distro, DistroWatch appears high up, you land on the page, that counts as a hit for the day. So it's not a completely valid thing what DistroWatch has in their top listings, but it's not something to completely say it's totally meaningless either. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here is the hit rating. Of course, if you look in the last several months, whatever amount of time, you can reload that. Of course, over 12 months, you see that Mint is still a little higher. 6 months, Manjaro is now a little bit higher. I'm expecting Mint to pass Manjaro again in the next couple weeks as Mint 19 rolls out. I would expect that to jump back and forth. But you'll notice, though, that the number of hits these two distros have is over 1,000 higher, over 30% higher than the next highest, which is Ubuntu. Now, to be fair, Ubuntu would probably be higher if all of the Ubuntu flavors were all lumped under one banner of Ubuntu. That doesn't happen. But just all to say, this isn't perfectly indicative of exactly who's using a distro or not. But it does give us a good hint. So why is Mint and Manjaro at the top? One immediate thing strikes me right off the top, and that's that green things grow. Okay, I mean they both got green. I mean green grows. I mean just a sign of a tree, a plant, it grows. So that's I think what it is. If you want a successful Linux distro, you got to have green in there somewhere. That's it. Just have green. Maybe that's why Elementary did good, because the default wallpaper is a tree. It's green. It's got green. You see? But no, outside of that, obviously I use Linux Mint as my daily drivers, both for video production and for web design when I am working remotely. In the main office, I still use Windows because I've had that computer for nearly a decade and it still works. When it stops working, it's being replaced immediately. But when I am traveling remote or, in the annex office, which doubles as the couch in a movie, it's Linux Mint. And I use Linux Mint because I am not a developer. I'm not a tinkerer. I'm not a guy who sits on the bottom. I am a website designer. So I'm a developer in the website sense, not in the software and operating sense. So I'm not looking at a distro for the weird little back-end things. I'm not all that knowledgeable about those. When I looked at what Windows was doing with Windows 10, saying this is not a viable operating system for me, I had to look into something else. And so I did. I looked into different versions. I was playing with Ubuntu for a while, but I missed the workflow that I had in Windows. And that's what Linux Mint Cinnamon gave me, is a near identical workflow to the Windows platform. And I just found, because I use Windows, I use Linux, and I use Mac, all three of them every day. All right. So with that being said, the workflow in a Windows style, I have a taskbar at the bottom. I have all my windows out. I can do multiple windows on the bottom. I can minimize everything. I have a screen to my left or the menu to my left with my options. I have favorite softwares. I have a quick launch bar. All of those things make me very highly effective in how I do my workflow. And I do experiment with different workflows. I have a computer right beside me here that runs a variety of different workflows and systems on it so that I'm constantly always experimenting with different ways of doing things. And so what I did is I came down and looked at Linux Mint the first time, and I was like, this is a distro that I could love. And so I installed it on my web design computer, and it was everything I was looking for in a Linux distro. On top of that, it has a very high degree of stability. It works on nearly every bit of hardware. I've tried it. Now, there's hardware it doesn't work with for sure, but it works with nearly every bit of hardware I've tried. Even setting up more complicated hardware devices for people. We wanted to run other distros. We ran into walls. I said, let's just try Linux Mint. Worked perfectly. And so that's kind of the case there with Linux Mint, is it works so well with so many hardware configurations. It's just an amazing operating system, all without collecting data and doing weird, funky little things, stuff like that. Now, I first experimented with Manjaro maybe about 6 months ago. I ran that on my system. I ran Manjaro with a Budgie community build. I think the Budgie's a community build. And it was like the second best operating system I ever used. I had zero problems. The workflow was great. I mean, I loved the look. I loved how everything worked. I used that to run media. It was one of the few systems that I had that I didn't run into some of the media type issues, stuttering in videos, things like that. Loved the distro. It just worked great. So I'm looking at these two distros and I'm asking, what is it about these two distros that work? So I want to go ahead and we're going to have a look at their individual websites, and then we're going to go ahead and look at the distros themselves in a VirtualBox. So starting with Linux Mint. Linux Mint comes with a few different desktop environments. Now our core Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu. They are currently on 18.3, and 19 is set to be due out here in just a week or two. Currently you have Cinnamon, Mate, XFCE, and KDE, but KDE is going away. It's very sad, but KDE is going away. One of the first tasks I'm going to do with 18 or with 19 when it comes out, I'm going to try and install KDE on it and see what happens. I'm just going to see if I can make that working, because the computer over here, which is currently on Debian and Cinnamon, the computer itself, the hard drive in that computer that runs Linux, is Linux Mint KDE, and I love it. It is absolutely one of my favorite desktops. So 19 is going to have Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. Now Mint also has LMDE, which is a Debian base. They have Cinnamon and they have Mate, 32 and 64 bits. And what they're doing is they're releasing version 3 here right around the time they release the Ubuntu-based 19. And so you have a couple different desktop environments, but if they're supporting it, it's going to work. Linux Mint generally is a bulletproof distro. The installer is very easy. It can install alongside, or it can install wiping your drive. You can do more work with it. You can encrypt your hard drive at install. I actually do that on some of my computers. My computers have more sensitive data. Those are encrypted. It supports that right out of the installer. It works great. Very easy to install, and it just happens to work on nearly everything I've ever tried it on. So this computer right now, the old computer I had was a Intel i5. This one is a Ryzen 5 1600, so no issues there. The graphics card is a AMD R7 240, I think. No issues, never had to fight with any of that. And so Linux Mint, it's just out of the box. It works with my CDs. It works with any media formats. Anything I needed to do. I'm running dual monitor setups right here. I mean, this system for me is a perfect Linux build. I can't think of anything else that I'd really want to do differently. That's kind of what's going on with this one. So that is Linux Mint. Now, jumping over to Manjaro, where Manjaro has a lot of strengths, its installer is slightly more complicated. However, it's not overwhelmingly more complicated. It's just a little different. Now, Manjaro is based on Arch, which also means we have the Arch user repository. So, like, you have software for everything in the history of the world, although be cautious, some of it very well may be bad. So you have to be careful with that. But I found with Manjaro that Everything in this also worked out of the box. I had very little issues. Now, where this one shines is it has this huge community behind it that does a really good job with just making sure things are working out of the box. It's based on Arch, but they test each of the Arch updates before they get it. Manjaro generally will run newer software than Linux Mint. Linux Mint does run at times older software. I fix those by running PPAs or Flatpaks, just other things to install the latest software. That to me is not a huge issue. Manjaro will always be pushing some of the latest software, but they always make sure it's working before they push it out. So you have a little bit better compatibility. One of the great things about it is you have community builds and you have your basic builds. So the default of Manjaro is XFCE. You can get, of course, you can get a minimal or a standard install, differences which software packages. They also have an official KDE, GNOME. They have Manjaro Architect, which I don't know much about that. I'm not in this world quite as much. I kind of live in the Debian world usually. But you can also come down here for the community releases, and this is really where Manjaro stands out. We have Awesome, which is based on a different Windows manager. I have no idea what this one is. BSPWN, this is new. We have Budgie. This is the one that I ran. Love this system. It worked great for me. You have your Cinnamon. You have your Deepin. You have i3, LXDE, Mate, OpenBox. And if there's a need for more, they'll probably include it down the road. So you have a ton of options as far as Manjaro. Out of the box, they tend to work. But there's some things about Manjaro and Mint that they do that make them very easy to work with. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and boot these guys up in a virtual box. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to have a look at Linux Mint first. So I'm going to boot these up in a virtual box. It will be nearly the same virtual box for each of these guys. And our virtual box is going to, this has, I want to say we have 4 cores and 6 gigs of RAM in each of these virtual boxes. So we're just going to get this a second to boot itself up. All right, so in a virtual box, we will get this rendering in software mode. That's because the drivers for the virtual box are not fully up and running. Running on Debian, I had to install the non-free drivers to get the Cinnamon to work. That has more to do with Cinnamon. Now you're greeted with this welcome screen, and you can install your apps. You have your drivers, documentation, new features, ways to help. So one of the first things you want to do is, this is what really stands out with Mint, is this driver install tool, because this will allow you to, what it's going to do is it's going to look at all of this hardware on your computer, and it's going to determine, is there any other software you should use. Now, Manjaro has the option on install. Do you want to use just free, or do you want to also include non-free on the installer? Linux Mint doesn't ask that question. It gives you just the free to start, and then it gives you this option here, which is going to install non-free drivers as you need. So this is for the processor. This one here would probably fix that video rendering. We're not going to try and do that, but this one there might fix that. So this is using the proprietary drivers. So that's what this is going to do. You also have in Linux Mint, I like the update system. Some people have criticized this as being confusing and ha 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 ha. And no, it's not. Okay, what this is it is an update screen. At the first launch, you say, just keep the computer safe, which means security patches are going to be pushed. Let me review sensitive updates, which means that you're going to have security updates and some other updates that aren't listed as quite so critical. And then there's the always update everything, which does have a small chance of breaking some things in the system. Manjaro doesn't have this. Manjaro just updates everything unless you tell it not to. And so occasionally Manjaro will break on an update versus Mint may not. If you have it set, and I usually just keep the minimum setting here. And then when you run this, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask you, do you want to switch to a local mirror? So for that, I need to enter my password again, and it's going to go ahead and search for the repositories, and it's going to be doing a speed check on various repositories around the world. And then you just want to pick whichever one works, either the fastest or whichever one you feel the best about. Like, I've never heard of EvoWise, CND. That's actually new. I know of advanced hosters. I've never heard of the pair networks. Usually what I do is I pick the fastest university. So in this case, James Madison. So let's just pick James Madison. And then for the base, this is where the Ubuntu's coming. Once again, I'll just pick whichever one of the universities usually is at the top. So you see that the default of the Ubuntu build happened to be in UK, so we definitely want to probably try and change that one around a little bit. Okay, we'll probably get some that are faster than this, but we're just going to go ahead and do this so we don't have to wait. So what that's going to do is that's going to change our repositories to the fastest repositories, or the repositories we're simply choosing. It might be a trust matter. That's why I don't pick the ones I don't necessarily know. That's why I stick with the universities usually. Much more trustworthy. Now it's going to give us any updates we want to install. And I did not install updates on Mint. I did install updates on Manjaro. I actually wanted to show you that initial installation screen. All right, so once you do this, that's going to, what it's doing is it's updating the Mint installer. Now it's going to reload, and then now there's more updates to install. We're not going to go through here on camera and update all these, but you can see that some of these are unchecked. This is because when we changed our settings to only give us, the medium setting, it's leaving certain packages unchecked because the system says, well, those packages we don't want to update because there's a small chance they could break a system. Now, the other reason I really like Linux Mint is it updates the kernels separately from the software, because there are times a kernel will break. Updating a kernel could break your system. So here in the view, you go into the Linux kernels. Now you can actually select which Linux kernels you want to use. I'm not sure which kernels. Okay, so it looks like 4.10 is active on this. We'll probably have maybe 4.15 or later or something and activated on the new one when it comes out. But you can literally pick which kernel you want to use. You can install or not install the kernels independently of the software. That's really a big thing. As far as your setup, if you are a Windows user, this is going to be a very familiar setup to you. We have our menu down here with all of our different software groups, all of the different software pre-installed. The software pre-installed breaks down into a series of tools. So we have GIMP installed, Internet applications, we have Firefox, Thunderbird, we have the Office packages, sound and video with a rhythm box. We have the lightweight movie player, the media player. We have VLC. So we have a full suite of packages. Some people may say this is a little bit too much. For people who really know Linux and like using Synaptic Package Manager, you have the option to use your Synaptic Package Manager. If you're newer to Linux and you don't know what all the packages are you're looking for, we have a very nice software center. And the Software Center was recently redesigned. It does searching really well. We have a Flatpak section. There's just a lot of good stuff in the software system here. So this in and of itself, the software package, this whole thing just works. It works really well. That's why I like Mint. As far as theming it, of course, theming really depends more on your desktop environment than it does on your distro. And I do theming in a lot of my videos. I'm not going to go into all of that. But we do have a settings panel here. Of course, this is where you adjust your fonts, your themes, your backgrounds, things like that. Under your preferences, one of the things that I like about Cinnamon, again, this is desktop environment related. We have your online accounts where you can attach various online accounts. If you have a Nextcloud, sometimes Nextcloud appears on this list, sometimes it doesn't. It is on one of my 18.3 computers. It's not on my other 18.3 computer, but OwnCloud connects with Nextcloud the exact same way. Use that. We also, though, have a startup application. So these are the startup applications. I might turn this off on this system because I don't have NVIDIA drivers on here. I don't really care to. If you don't want to see the Mint welcome screen, you can actually turn off the script that even looks for it the first time. Mint update, Flatpaks. If you're not using Flatpaks, you can turn that off. So you have all those different settings. And then we also have in Mint, we have some backup software. Now in Ubuntu, your backup software appears in this settings. Well, it used to. I'm not sure if it still does. But now we actually have two different things. We have Time Shift, which will literally make a mirror of everything in your system on a separate location. And we have a basic backup tool, which will back up certain files to certain places. It's fairly limited in that. I'm not sure if Manjaro has the backup systems in there or not. If somebody in the comments knows for sure, let me know. We support graphics tablets, at least on Cinnamon, out of the box with this. Here's our software sources. We have a firewall. So there's a lot of good features. There's a lot of things that really makes Linux Mint a fabulous, fabulous system. And that is really why Linux Mint is so rated. There's a lot of criticism, securities. What security issues? I have pulled people to ask for that. I have not encountered any. Their website was hacked once, and it pushed malware-laden distro for about an hour and a half while they found it, and everybody that verified the ISO didn't have a problem with that. There might very well be some issues with some older packages, but as far as I can see and have checked and verified myself, all security patches are pushed to Linux Mint just as fast. They are just not as fast at pushing all of the latest software packages to the latest versions. That's what they don't necessarily spend their time doing. So that's Linux Mint. So we're going to go ahead and we'll jump on over to Manjaro. So give me a moment to shut this system down, and we will move on over to Manjaro. All right. So we'll go ahead and have a quick look at our comments while I'm waiting for the other system to boot up. All right, so where's I at? Wait, GUI for Pac-Man. Okay, Manjaro uses Pac-Man. Yep, okay. Okay, I think I've been through all these. Manjaro overtook Mint. Yes. Use the distro, it works for you, not because it's top 10 in DistroWatch. Would use Manjaro, except my favorite IDE, brackets, isn't available for Arch. Huh. What? Kitty wants to come up. Hello, peoples. Alright, let's see. Hey, you know what? While I'm reading comments, I should actually start Manjaro. I should do that, shouldn't I? Alright, only reason Manjaro and Mint are at the top because they feature in search results. Ubuntu doesn't because it has a ton of successful SEO on their website. It's really simple. I disagree though, Alan. I mean, I disagree. I think that they're high rated because they work. There's a lot of buzz about them in the community. That's my personal take. Okay. Green is the color of Ecto Cooler. Yes, it is. Use Ubuntu on my laptop. It's great on old hardware. Still on Ubuntu distro. Also, Ubuntu Mate is green. It's also a highly hyped distro. Yeah, there you go. See, maybe it's green. So it's like green is your key. Incorporate green into your distro and you will be successful. So far, Mint is the most similar to Windows in terms of the way it operates. That's why, for me, I use it, install it. Other people who are used to it. Yep. Neo21, are you the one? Yes. Okay, true about green things growing. I have 2 green things growing in my window box. I don't know if they'll be flowers or weeds, though. Are you really letting Morpheus get into your head? Okay. I'd love to have used KDE. Let's see. Whenever I try to install KDE over an existing distro, I can never get KDE Connect to work. Huh. Okay, Joe, remind me. That's a thing I'll look into. Pop! OS encrypts by default. That's good to know. That's nice. Joe Collins showed how Mint can also do an OEM install, which came in handy for my brother. Good. Currently using Pop! Yeah, Pop! OS is pretty cool. I did a video on that, but I don't think it ever got published live to the website. It was a stream, and then the stream came down. I'm not sure the Pop! OS actually got featured on my website. Okay. Problem I had with Manjaro was my touchpad didn't work. My Ornix Pro, didn't like messing around with it, really liked it otherwise. Now, Canonical knows what computer he's watching YouTube on. Groundbreaking difference. Okay. What was about the sub feed being broken? Zaza, I will go ahead and release that video here. It might be released tomorrow morning. I'm not sure when exactly I'll get it released. I need to do production on my other channel's video tonight. It's supposed to go out Wednesday, but I was dog sitting for somebody, so I didn't get a chance to do that. Semi-new Linux user is told to go to Tayson first, move to another distro. Oh, Mint, probably Mint Cinnamon to move to another distro. I used to install Linux Mint, but giving Mate a go. Very good. Debian stable is best. Oh, and by the way, I did at least on one of my current Debian build, I was finally able to resolve the Kodi maxing out the volume issue. I'll have to try it on my other build, but it was, yeah, exciting. Question, since I wanted to move to Linux full-time, should I encrypt the entire drive or just used data? Well, if you already have it installed, you can only encrypt the full drive on install. You can encrypt just your home folder. That's a possibility. It's always better to encrypt the full drive. It really depends on what you use your computer for. My basic, like this streaming computer, there is 0 sensitive data on this computer. I don't bother encrypting it. My backup computer, fully encrypted. It's got financials, it's got passwords, it's got all sorts of stuff on it. So it really depends on what your computer is. Last updated Fedora killed my network. Ew. Linux Mint 17.1, it's working fine now. Yep. Arch Linux is so beautiful. Add it in Manjaro. Open a search engine you don't normally use. Search for Manjaro. DistroWatch will come up. Search for Ubuntu. DistroWatch will be number 2. Well, I mean, again, I mean, it's a difference of opinion. It's my take. I will look at that, though, see what I think. What DE are you running for Manjaro? All right, I'm going to be looking at Manjaro on XFCE because that's their main build. So let's go ahead and jump on over to that. All right, so here we are on Manjaro. We're running the Manjaro, the basic chief build, which is XFCE. And again, we are greeted with a welcome screen. We have release information, forums, chat rooms, etc. We can launch it at start or not launch it at start. The default launches. So if you don't want that, turn that off. I really love the theming they did. XFCE, classically for me, does not necessarily have a beautiful looking feel, but this distro just nails it. It's the power of XFCE. If you know what you're doing with it, you can do very good, very classy stuff. I mean, it's CSS script, so you can do a lot of really nice stuff with it. However, a lot of your basic just out-of-the-box XFCE does look a little dated. Manjaro did a great job of making it not necessarily look dated. So what we have with this is we do have the ability to come down here and we have system up-to-dates at the bottom. So this button here is your package manager. But we also have, like Linux Mint, the kernels are operated on a different thread, and I think this one was asking about kernels. So we're right-clicking the Manjaro logo, come up here, and this is now where you can see an upgrade to the kernels. So you can see here the status. So this one's an experimental, so don't do this one on a production computer. We have this one. We have the real-time. We have an LTS. This is the one that's running. So one of the first immediate things you see is that Manjaro, like I said, will run more recent software. That means you're going to run nearing the bleeding edge of kernels. You're going to run nearing the bleeding edge of software. Now, if we go in and we have a look at our Office programs, so let's pull up this, and my guess is, I'm not going to make a guess yet. Okay, so we're still running LibreOffice 5, not 6. Mostly, I mean, this Manjaro hasn't released a brand new version just recently. But let's go ahead and have a look at which version. So we're running 5.4, which is a very recent version. I think the Linux Mint 18 default is 5.1 or 5.2. I think it's 5.2. So this is where we can adjust our kernels. We can install various kernels. We have experimentals. We have real times. It gives us a very nice readout on that. Our package manager over here, this is where we can look for different software. Again, this one here is going to be a little bit more, it's a little bit less user-friendly. Like the Linux Mint is very graphical, very user interfacey. This one's not quite as much, but it's not exactly as hard to use and understand for a new user as Synaptic is going to be. So this is it's a good happy medium. I can search for something here like web browser, you know, and it should give me web browsers. There's aggregates, there's Chromium, there's GNOME Web, Firefox. There's a Firefox Developer Edition. So we have a variety of different things you can search for in the system. You also, though, have the ability to go in looking at your groups. So we have a variety of different groups to look at. So let's see, there's a lot of different groups here. There's Cody groups. Let's see. What I was looking for categories: education, games, graphics, etc. So you have a lot of different options in here. Now you also have the Arch user repository, which is if you're looking for something that's not in here otherwise, your Arch user repository might have it, but there's warnings with that, in that the Arch user repository could potentially break your system. You have to be aware of that. Like, there could be bad packages in this. They're not all vetted. What's coming from the official repositories, everything here is vetted. Arch user repositories, disabled by default, not necessarily vetted. So it contains potential risks. If you want to use it, go ahead and turn it on. You can check updates from it. Here's your build directory. And now if you update and you do searches, now you can actually come in and you can actually come down here. You can run your repositories from a variety of different places. So you can look for things in different locations. The Arch user repository is just going to have a ton of stuff in it. As far as software installed, Manjaro has, like we said, the minimal, and it has the default. This one's the default. So we have a lot of different accessories, things that work out, just, you know, basic things, basic tools, menu editors, etc. We have some games. So Steam is pre-installed. Last time I checked, pre-installed Steam on Manjaro may be broken. The fix is to uninstall it, remove the Steam folders from your home directory, reinstall it, and it should work. I think there's a dependency missing. That worked for me. We do have GIMP. We have a lot of the same software we had on Linux Mint. Here's Firefox, HexChat. We do actually have Skype installed. Let's see, is this officially Skype, or is this like a web package? This looks like a web package, not the official Skype. So, Steam, we have Thunderbird. So very similar in the applications. We have VLC, Audacious, Pulse Audio. Here's our Office. So again, notice that we have Office Word Online, which is a, probably my guess is something more like an ICE package. Basically, it's just going to the website online. You'd have to come in here, sign in with your scary Microsoft account. But you have the option anyway. It's there. You can get rid of that stuff if you want to. Here's all your different settings. And one of the things that Manjaro has is they do have a Manjaro-specific settings manager. variety of location things. Here's the hardware configuration. This is going to be similar to the drivers thing. These are those things that really stand out that a lot of distros don't have. Mint and Manjaro has it. That is, in my opinion, why these distros are popular and they work. Out of the box, user-friendly. This is also set up just like Windows. They have extra little things like driver installers, separate ways to update the kernels, update the software, a wide variety of software installed. They have a polished look, a polished feel about them. They don't feel old. They don't feel dated. They're just good systems. So that's kind of my take. That is kind of the battle between Mint and Manjaro. Why I think they're fairly highly rated. As far as who uses exactly which Linux distros, we'd have a hard time figuring all that out exactly either way. But regardless, it is worthy of consideration to look at, just kind of look at what each of these distros is doing. If you're new to Linux and you want to try out some of these different distros, I would recommend looking at one of these two first because they have a lot of polish to them. They're very user-friendly out of the box. And they tend to work on a lot of different systems. I personally use Linux Mint. If I were starting over again, I'd probably still go with Linux Mint, but Manjaro would come in with a quick second. So those are my thoughts. What do you think in the comments down below? I hope you've enjoyed this video from Switched to Linux. If you'd like to help support the channel, check out the links at the top. There is another video over here. You can check out our Patreon page down here. And you can check out shop.switchtolinux.com for information on a t-shirt like this or some other designs. Thanks for watching and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.